All right, it is noon. So welcome everyone to the Hawaii Aquaculture Tech and Research Brown Bag, sponsored by NELHA and the Hawaii Aquaculture Collaborative, which is facilitated by the University of Hawaii Sea Grant College program. A little bit of housekeeping. The recording of today's session and slides will be posted on our website, hiaquacollab.org. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and use the hand raising feature or the chat to ask questions and make comments during our discussion. This is the Technology and Research Working Group of the Hawaii Aquaculture Collaborative. The purpose is to provide a space for Hawaii aquaculture industry leaders and stakeholders to collaborate on technology and research solutions. Our format is about 10 to 15 minutes of background and a problem that an industry leader is trying to solve, and the rest of the time will be for questions, discussions, and possible solutions. Our schedule is every second Wednesday of each month at noon, and if you have a tech and research problem you'd like to solve, please contact Kai, and for more info, see our website. Just to let you know what's coming up next month, Tori from NOAA's Pacific Islands Regional Office will be walking us through the final programmatic EIS, and we'll be seeking input and guidance on developing a permitting program for aquaculture in federal waters. This is happening on November 9th. And now let's get to our main event. We'd like to welcome Dr. Armando Garcia Ortega. He is an associate professor of aquaculture at UH Hilo. He's here to discuss manufacturing aquafeeds in Hawaii. Is it feasible? Welcome, Armando.
Thank you, Jane, and thanks everyone for your attendance. I hope to have good questions and nice presentation. Let me see if I can start here. Okay, so yeah, I want to thank the Hawaii Collaborative Group, Sea Grant, and NELHA folks for the invitation to talk to you today. I think it's a very important subject. We probably should be doing this a while ago, but yeah, it's good that we are talking about these aquaculture issues that in Hawaii. Okay, so we're discussing about the feasibility of aquaculture feeds manufacturing here in the state. So we put it as a question, so we will try to answer if that is feasible. Yeah, we'll see what comes out of it. So let me see. Just quickly, I will introduce myself for those of you who haven't met yet. So I come from Mexico. I studied biology. Over there, back then, when I was close to graduate, there was no aquaculture programs, aquaculture graduate studies there, so I had to look abroad. Fortunately, I found a professor in Belgium, Ghent University, where I did a Master of Science in aquaculture. After that, I went to the Wageningen University in the Netherlands for a PhD in aquaculture nutrition. Wageningen, by the way, it's the top agricultural university in the world. Came back to Mexico, worked there for 11 years in Mazatlan, the Pacific coast, mostly developing technologies for production of marine fish, a new species for aquaculture. In 2011, there was an opportunity to come to UH Hilo, and here I am. So almost 12 years working in this beautiful place. I work mostly on my research focused on, of course, aquaculture, nutrition, and I'm also interested in developing technologies for production of marine animals and plants in land-based systems. As for the nutrition, I focus on using not only algae, but now we diversify to other alternative ingredients, new ingredients that can be used in production of aquafeeds for carnivorous and omnivorous fish. So this is a brief summary of what we're going to be discussing today. Hopefully I can use in short small amount of time, provide as much information as possible and as easy to digest as possible. So let's start with Hawaii. So I don't need to tell you Hawaii is an important state for aquaculture. We rank currently number 8. That's according to the 2017 Census of Agriculture, which, by the way, we should be having the newest one this year. So they publish one every 5 years, so 22 should be the next one. And you know that value for aquaculture, the sales in the States accounts for almost 80 million, from which almost half goes for algae, probably just 2 products there, and the rest from others and ornamental fish. So we could assume that aquaculture feeds, commercial aquaculture feeds support the production of all these other products from Hawaii aquaculture. We don't know, unfortunately, what other means, but we will assume that most of it, if not all of it, constitute animals that are produced in intensive systems. So that's the assumption. So that's to have an idea what we're talking about. In this case, about $40 million worth of aquaculture products. And something that we don't talk much about, and every time I have the opportunity, I like to remind people that Hawaii County is a top producer in the nation. So we rank currently number 3 in the country, and I like to show the data on that. So basically, when we make the analysis in counties across the country, Hawaii production, the Big Island production in aquaculture ranks 3rd. So among more than 1,200 different countries in the world producing some kind of aquaculture product. So that's, I think, something that is worth praising. So I'll just think. All right, so it's important to keep in mind why we're doing this and how we need to approach when we discuss about feeds in aquaculture, development of feeds. So feeds in aquaculture are used mostly in intensive systems, and that's for animals. So in order to have an ingredient or any kind of material that we use in aquafeeds, we need to at least fulfill 3 requirements, major requirements, A, B, C, mostly nutritional quality. So that ingredient should have what it needs or what will be required by the animal in question to provide the nutrients. So it has to be a good or high quality, nutritional quality, and has the right mix of nutrients. The second requirement will be availability. This means that we need to have enough of that material in order to support the industry. So we might have a very good, excellent quality, nutritional quality material, but maybe we don't have enough of it. So that is a very important consideration. So that's the second. So availability of that product. And last but not least will be the cost of it. So we might have a very good ingredient with high nutritional value for the animal that's available widely everywhere. We can get as much as we need. But if that ingredient is too expensive to be used in animal feeds, that's something that usually will disqualify it for application. So we have to keep in mind those 3 characteristics. And basically, that's what I will be presenting today. What we have done in each one of these 3 requirements for inclusion of ingredients in aqua feeds. So when I was preparing these slides, I realized there had been a lot of work being done in the past. So it's not the idea to make a very extensive, exhaustive revision of the work have been done. I just put here the most recent and the ones that I'm aware of. So basically, we discussed the Oceanic Institute. So they have been working on this for a couple of decades or even more. And recently, well, 10 years already, they have been publishing their results in this regard, focusing on the use of local ingredients for aquaculture feed manufacture. You can click the link here to get access to this document. When they were working with Pacific Islands materials, fish meal mostly, and using that in formulation and manufacture of feed to support fish farming in this area. They also, around the same time, they were working with Big Island abalone in development of abalone feeds, also with local ingredients, as much of them as possible. Later on, they were working, and all of this was, or most of it was supported by CTSA. They were testing, and you can see here a list in one of the documents they have in the website, the list of local ingredients that they test for the quality. And it's important, I highlighted here a few of them, mostly because those are the ones that, in my opinion, have a major or higher probability to be included in whatever commercial application for feed manufacturing in Hawaii. these are mostly ingredients that have a high protein content. You can see here for crude protein, this is the highest. In order to have an ingredient to be considered for as protein source in aquaculture feeds, we needed to have at least 30% of protein. So less than that usually is not really considered to be a good ingredient. Doesn't mean that cannot be used. Yes, can be used, but not in large amounts. So that's one. And not necessarily all the ingredients that are not good in terms of quality or content of protein, we could use them for other nutrient supply. For example, macadamia nuts, that could be used for crude lipid, so lipid source, depending on, of course, the profile of the lipid in that material. But anyway, so this is an extensive list that Warren Dominy, Dongfeng Deng, and Dr. Yu were busy working on this already some time ago. There are a couple of private companies working on this. Warren, fortunately, he's not with us anymore. He was working with fish waste in order to make some ingredients that could be used as protein source in locally produced protein source for aqua feeds. Also Hawaii Feed and Fertilizer, they are working on this regard, so using that fish waste in order to make a product that could be used as protein source in this. Again, all of this is locally made. Us here at UH have been working also on this, testing initially algae. We use algae from Celana, now a company that's not there anymore, but we use green algae and diatoms and include them in tilapia feeds with good results. Also, we test the Hematococcus pluvialis from Cyanotech, and we found that we could use up to 15% of this ingredient in feeds for Campacci, for Seriola riboleana, which is a really good product. We don't use it much as protein ingredient because some issues there regarding digestibility of the material, but we can use as much as 15%, which is a significant amount. So remember, in aquaculture feed formulation, we have a list of ingredients, which usually it's quite long. So 15%, that one single ingredient contributed to the total amount of nutrients in the feed, it's significant, it's good. Probably we will talk and discuss about the feed mill, the Oceanic Institute feed mill at Hilo. So we work with them and we probably produce the very first feed made at this infrastructure in 2018 with two CTSA funded projects in order to produce tilapia and moi feeds using as much locally sourced ingredients as possible. So we were able to formulate and produce feeds with more than 50% of local ingredients on it. And we test them with good results. I will show you that in a minute. We also tested four moi feeds, 2 were sinking and 2 were floating. And unfortunately, that was not really the result as we expected, but yeah, it was something that we proved that the feed mill actually is capable of producing these feeds, both sinking and floating. And this is the result from that trial where we test the feeds for tilapia. So feed number 1 and 2, the only difference is the lipid content in those two. And we compared that to a commercial tilapia feed. And you can see that the fish weight gain was pretty similar, not significantly different between the commercial and feed number 2 that we produce in the feed mill. So that gave us really good indication of the utility of those ingredients that we use in this feed to be utilized at commercial scale. Well, the value here, I put an asterisk here because the price that you see there per pound of feed doesn't reflect the manufacturing cost. That's only reflecting the cost of the ingredients. I understand that we will have in a couple of months a presentation from a CETA PhD student at Manoa who will be discussing the economics of feed manufacture here in Hawaii. So I won't say much on that, but just keep in mind that we may be able to compete with commercial feeds in this regard as well. Further collaboration with CITER, in this case, we produce feeds using spirulina and schistochondrium, two algae, one of them spirulina produced here in Hawaii too, in Kona site. And we were able to include up to 75% of these ingredients to replace fish meal, fish oil, and soy protein concentrate, which are typical ingredients used in commercial feeds. So in other words, we were able to include more than 61% of all the ingredients in the feed from these just two algae ingredients, which again, they are really good results. Well, probably we should have to, this is how the pellets from the grinding come. This is green because it contains a lot of spirulina. So even at very low levels, like 25% of spirulina in the feed, it had really turned it green. So really, really interesting working with spirulina. It's a very valuable ingredient. Further work, recently we are working with CITAR, Dr. Winston Su, in testing, in this case, yeast made with papaya waste. So this ingredient, very nice smell, sweet, but not, I mean, the maximum amount we could use from it was about 12% of the total weight. Again, it's not that bad, but yeah, it's another ingredient that was manufactured here, well, there in Oahu, and that we could add to the list of potential ingredients that we could use at one point for commercial application. So current work includes, we are actually, as when it was Monday, we finished a feeding experiment with tilapia when we test double hydrolyzed black soldier fly larvae meal. We are looking and expecting to analyze the results, but yeah, it seemed that we could include this material up to 25% in the feed. So I will confirm that later on, but yeah, that's work that is currently in progress. A couple of months ago, we hear from Neil Sims from Ocean Era about the work they use in including seaweed extract, whole seaweeds in feeds for tilapia and marine fish. So they are currently busy with that too. CTSA and CGRAN are working on an economic feasibility study. So that's what I mentioned before. We will probably hear from them in a couple of months. So they are trying to find out if it is possible to do this in the economic sense. I think in the technical and nutritional side of things, that is possible. We're also working with Big Island and Wallonia in producing feeds for them that can be made with local ingredients. So currently they are importing this from faraway places in Africa and in Mexico. So yeah, we should be able to do that here on the island. Okay, so to summarize and conclude what we just saw, where we are we there? Are we there yet? Well, I can say yes for what it is in terms of the nutritional quality of the ingredients that we have available in the island and in the state in general. We have some that they fulfill those requirements, nutritional value, and that's important, that's good. So that's requirement A. But we still have to talk about B and C. B will be availability, and that is still a challenge. So remember, we need enough quantities of these materials in order to be used at commercial scale. And that has different factors that prevent us from reaching the point where we can suggest we can use those ingredients. And that's basically because we don't have large agriculture production in Hawaii. We might be able to support certain amount of feed production, but up to a certain level. So that's something we still have to analyze. So also we have lack of facilities to process and store ingredients. So that was one of the problems the Oceanic Institute feed mill had when they start producing these feeds for moi and tilapia and others. There's no place where they can store and process this. We might have agricultural products that we could use for feeds, but we still have to dry them or grind them or I don't know, hydrolyze them in order to be able to use them. So that's still lacking. In case of ingredients like spirulina that I mentioned, it's really good. Unfortunately, this is prohibitive in terms of cost. It's very expensive. In the past, Cyanotech, they used this, what is called ag-grade product, which was cheaper than the product they use for human consumption. Unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. So if we are aiming to use high-value ingredients like spirulina, we should aim to have ag-grade product that can be used for animal feeding, which usually tend to be a lower cost. And something important we need to keep in mind when we are discussing this feasibility of producing feeds, commercial feeds in Hawaii, is that feed manufacture is at commercial scale, it's a business. And as such, a lot of factors play a role here. We might have good intentions and desire and many things that will allow us to get to a certain level of production at commercial scale, but still the business side of the question is probably what's preventing us from reaching that point. Again, that probably will be discussed when Sita present her data on that regard. But yeah, that's something we should keep in mind. Why we don't have a commercial feed mill now? We know we have important aquaculture production, but why we don't have that? Why we have to keep importing feeds from outside? Well, anyway, I promised to keep it short, so I hope I fulfill that promise. So I just wish to thank collaborators throughout the years. I apologize if I missed someone, but yeah, it's a group effort, and we are just catalyzing all these potentials and expertise that everyone in the state has and abroad too, or in the mainland. And yeah, that will be the last slide. And just wanted to thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, I will be happy to entertain those. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Armando. Yes, let's open up for questions.
I have a quick one. Can Armando, can you remind me and maybe any of the rest of us who aren't sure of the feed mill out in Hilo, the status of it? I know this is something we've gone over a bunch, but some of us don't actually know the status of it.
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't really are in charge of the management of the facility. So that's actually located here at UH Hilo in the Caneva farm. But I often go there, but there's not much activity since already some time. And I think, well, we mentioned that in 2018, they produced these feeds for the Moi and tilapia trials. They might have been producing some for pigs, but other than that, to my understanding, they haven't been producing much. There are some issues with regard to the equipment that might be not in the most desirable state to be operated, and the funding to keep and to maintain the facilities. But yeah, that will be a more, I don't know if someone from the Oceanic Institute is in the meeting, but yeah, they might have a better information on that. But what we could demonstrate with this, at least part of the studies we show today, is that it's feasible to produce aquaculture feeds there. Challenge, as we mentioned, it's not easy to operate that. It's a scale, pilot scale feed mill, but still they have challenges in that regard. So to my knowledge, they are not really producing any feeds at the moment.
Thanks for the question, Crystal. Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, hi, this is Mike Irish. I'm just curious, Armando, did you have enough waste to develop to make it there in Hilo? Was that one of the problems that you may have had?
So you mean, what do you mean with weights?
Well, the amount of ingredients that you need.
Okay.
I think they were using fish waste as part of it.
Yeah, so that's a good question. The work we do here at Hilo is mostly at experimental scale. So we don't really need that much material to run the trial. So we just need, for example, when we're running the experiments with Lax of the fly or the yeast, we only need a few kilograms to run these trials. Problem will be when we want to escalate that to largest amount. And that's actually something that we are discussing with CTSA, because the interesting part for the industry will be to run these trials and get the animals to reach the market size. So that's something we cannot do at the moment. And mostly one of the impediments is the necessary amount to do that. We could use materials that are already commercially available, like, for example, hematococcus and probably spirulina and others, but specific ingredients like yeast or Lax of the fly, they still need to be, we still need to work in order to get the necessary amount to run at least trials when we can get the animals up to market size. And as I mentioned, availability is still a challenge for us and for all other ingredients, including macadamia nuts and others. So we are not there yet.
On your costing, when you were making the product and feeding it, and what was the costing guesstimation between what you were able to produce on maybe on a future commercial scale against what the cost to import that feed was per se, if they were buying tilapia feed for say $1.50 a pound, were you able to achieve their cost or better?
Yeah, that's a question that probably will get the answer next. I think it's in January when CETA will present the information on the economic analysis. So what we get, as I show in one of the slides, you have half of the cost of the commercial feeds for tilapia with our feeds made at the feed mill in Hilo. But that only includes the ingredient cost. So we need to add that to that, the manufacturing cost, the energy, the labor, everything that is needed. And that's what I mentioned. I'm confident, well, I don't know, probably I shouldn't say much on that, but I think we could have a competitive price on that regard, at least in the cost, depending on the ingredients. But problem still may be the availability. We might prove that the nutritional value is good, the cost might be good, but still the quantities of those ingredients may be another impediment. And to my knowledge, we still have some, I mean, we don't have that much information in that regard. We're working, I mean, there are people working across the state on that issue.
Armando, there's a question in the chat from, I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Ame, about black soldier fly larvae, about why you only included 25%.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I didn't have time to present the whole details on that, but what we did was to test different levels of black soldier fly from, I think was 20, 40, 60, and 80%. And those were to replace the fish meal in the feed. So we test different ingredients, different levels of the ingredient. And again, we just got the data, and by weighing the fish at the end of the experiment, I could see that the fish that were fed with the 20% replacement level got similar, almost the same growth as a control diet. So higher amount of test ingredient usually means lower fish growth. So yeah, we test different levels, and with the 25% I mean that could be the best level that we could use from this ingredient. And that's the kind of studies we do. We always analyze different levels of the test ingredient to learn how much of that particular ingredient could be used in the feed for in this case, for tilapia. But yeah, that's a good question. So it's we test different levels. Yeah.
Looks like we have another question from Nelha, audience in Nelha.
Yeah, this is Neil Pim. Great presentation. Thanks, Armando. In terms of scalable products in the region that might be used here, you'd mentioned the American Samoa, the cannery down there, and there was also in Majuro in the Marshall Islands, there was a tuna processing plant there. They were loining the tuna and then freezing them. So there was byproduct streams that were available from both of those. Do you know what's happening to those now? Whether they're being used, or they were in Panga for a while there, they were just being dumped. Is that the case?
Yeah, I couldn't tell, Neil. I haven't been there, and probably Cheng Sen Lee from CTSMA may have a better answer for that. But I believe if you have that activity already, you have a source of valuable byproduct that could be used for this purpose. I don't know if they throw it away or what they do with it, but yeah, certainly that is a really highly valuable product. Any kind of waste, fish waste contains high amounts of protein, and that's what we need. We need protein, especially for carnivorous fish. So yeah, I cannot answer that question right away, Neil, but yeah, certainly it's something that we need to look at.
And one more follow-up question by Ame. Is that, sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
No, you got it correct. Sorry, Dr. Ortega, following up on the BSFL question, did you study the input to the BSFL, like what kind of feedstock you were using, the protein, lipid content structure, to see what the conversion ratios were, as well as like omega-3s, omega-6s, HDLs, LDLs, the conservation of the organism, and also too, did your experiment include the chitin production or the chitin content of the larva in your experiments? And I studied this topic under Dr. Spencer Maleka at UH in CTAR. I helped him run the aquaculture lab a while back, and this was one of the topics we were working on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yes, all of those or most of those aspects, yeah, we are analyzing. So as I mentioned, we finished the experiment just a couple of days ago. So we are starting to get the analysis of the data. We will be sending this material and the fish samples for proximate composition, fatty acid analysis, and all that. So at this moment, I don't have that information, but I will be happy to share that when we have it. As for chitin, that's a really great question, but that will be something that our partner at CTAR, Dr. Winston Su, should be able to answer. So he's the one making the double hydrolysis. So the idea of doing double hydrolysis is to increase the amount of protein in the material and reduce the amount of fat, because Black-soldier fly larvae meal is high in fat. So that's something we don't want, because the type of fat they have is not really the type of fat we want in aquaculture feeds. But anyway, so that's still a work in progress. So I will ask for your patience until we get that information.
Dr. Su is working on producing pharmacological lipid structures for uses by cosmetics. So yeah, it depends on the feed that they have. We found that we could limit or enhance the lipid structure creation in the organisms, whether you feed it live or you're going to dry it and then get the protein stock that way. So yeah, it was very interesting work. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is the value of this kind of biotechnological work. So we are able to modify or to tailor-made whatever ingredient we need in the feeds or in the ingredient that ultimately will reach the target animal, the fish. So yeah, that's very, very interesting work. And yeah, we are looking forward to expand our cooperation with CTAR in this regard.
And Armando, one more question from Fred Lau about the best binder to use for fish feed and its economic, and its basically economics import this material.
Can you repeat that, Kai?
Sorry, it's in the chat. What would be the best binder to use for fish feed?
Oh, the binder. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, great questions. So usually the binder we use in our experiments is alginate. This is an expensive ingredient. You could use others, gum and others, but alginate for our purposes of experimental feed manufacture works well. Now, I should mention, when we use, for example, spirulina it's an algae and contains alginates. So that actually saves you in the cost of including binders in your feed formulation, because spirulina, it's very sticky when you work with it. So it's really great. I love to work. And again, I hope at one point we can get back to get our hands in ag-grade spirulina, because that's a really, really great product, high in protein, good amino acid profile, and among all the others, we can use it as a binder too. So yeah, I could elaborate a little bit more if you wish we can talk on the phone or by email, I can provide you more information on binders for this purpose. Thanks for the question, Fred.
Yes, thank you. And, you know, I was wondering, before we drop off, I know we're a little over, I was wondering if it's possible to get Mike Irish back. And Mike, we know that you are working on the feed mill at Campbell Industrial Park. Do you have any updates for us?
No, we just had a meeting this morning going over some of the, the prospects of it. And really, we're trying to figure out a way to use our fish waste and turn that into fish feed. But, you know, we've been working on this for, I would like to say about 8.5 years. And we're getting to a point where some real accurate business decisions will have to be made. And going back to our questions, Warren Dominique was working with us when he was here, and we did some runs and we made some fish meal with Island Commodities. And we actually put the binders together and actually fed it to fish, and it worked. We're now trying, we'd sent some samples of the regular meal that Island Commodities uses and see what that looks like. And we're going to be experimenting that next week in Majuro in those tanks. So, you know, we're coming up to speed. Like I said, it's been 8.5 years, and but hearing this conversation, we may look at Armando as and the other people at helping us to see if we can achieve it from a commercial standpoint. The good part about what we have here in Hawaii, the other companies such as United Fish and so forth, we have a lot of waste, and it's also expensive to get rid of the waste. Now, if we can figure out a way where we can all work together to bring this waste together and then convert it, and then be able to get the binders that we need at the price levels that we need, so that it's a cost savings to all of the aquaculture people. Because it would be very difficult to say, well, this is a really great product, but you're going to pay $2 when I'm getting it for $1 over here. And so that would not work. So those are some of the economics that we're looking at. But in Honolulu, we do believe we have, if everybody works together, enough fish waste to produce, and we have a pure product. Whether or not, again, it's economically feasible for the financial investment and so forth to put forth, those are the studies. And we'll be looking at your January study, which she brings hers out. But we may be asking Armando and his team for help in this area when we start to get further ahead on this project.
Yeah, we will be happy to collaborate with you in this regard. It's a very complex situation for us here in Hawaii, being so isolated from any kind of product, agricultural products, or any kind of product that we could use in feed manufacture. But yeah, we'll be happy to collaborate with you.
Great, because we need all the help we can get.
Sure. Yeah, and in that regard, I will probably just mention that it's also important that I don't know how good is the lobbying in the legislature, but yeah, we need the government help, because I mean, the industry can manage to up to a certain point. So I don't know if that would be part of the discussion in these talks, but I think we should do that, or that should be included.
Okay, appreciate it. I will be in contact with you, or
Sure.
please feel free to call me at Diamond Head Seafood, and we will try to see if we can exchange a lot of our notes so that we can help if we move forward to expedite it quicker.
Sure, certainly.
Yes, and Representative Tarnas is with us today. And I also wanted to say that we have been working with Senator De La Cruz and his staff too. They've been so wonderful to collaborate with, and we want to thank them for, trying to help us figure out how to garner more support for aquaculture in Hawaii. But thanks for joining us, Representative Tarnas.
Certainly, and thank you for the presentation and opportunity to ask questions. And that would, if you have specific suggestions for the legislature, I'm eager to hear them. Senator De La Cruz as well. I also know Rep. Scott Matayoshi is also watching today. So there's a number of us who are very interested in this, but if you have specific suggestions as to what we should do, whether it's to, the university's perspective or others, I'm eager to hear that. So we can talk offline, or if you want to mention something now, that's great, but I know we're running over time. So I would love to follow up. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Matayoshi. Did you want to say something? Okay, sorry, I think he's not on my screen anymore, but well, thank you all so much for the great conversation. And Dr. Armando, please feel free to reach out to him. We're also happy to connect collaborators and partners together. We very much appreciate this talk today, and we'll see you next month. We're gonna post these notes and recording on our website, and feel free to reach out to us too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Thank you, everyone. Aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you.